She ran to my door, hollering and screaming that somebody needs help.
He opened up his garage and he saw his pregnant fiance in a pool of blood.
She was shot a total of 4 times. We believe that she was stabbed and slashed.
For that level of violence, this was obviously a crime of passion.
I was at a loss for words. It was just like, is this real? Am I dreaming?
5 unique perspectives, 5 points of view, 1 murder.
I'm the sister of Avis Banks.
I was the lead investigator.
I served as pastor.
I was district attorney.
I was the lead detective during the Avis Banks murder.
My name is Reconstructing Banks, and I'm the sister of Avis Banks. Avis grew up in Vicksburg, Mississippi. She's always had a love for children, education. When I was young, we would play school, and she would always be the teacher. She would read to me. I knew she would eventually be a teacher. Avis was actually the first person in our immediate family to graduate from college. Avis seemed happy in her career. She would come home and talk about the babies in the daycare. She eventually did say she wanted to have 2 children of her own. Avis and Keon met in Vicksburg. Her and I were at the gym working out, and he approached her, and they had a conversation. And when he walked off, the first thing she asked me, she said, "What did you think?" And I was like, well, to be honest, there's nobody out there that's gonna be good enough for my sister. Avis would talk about Keon from time to time with me. She would say how kind he was. He would do different things for her. He was really sweet to her. They had similar careers. He was a teacher. It kind of brought them closer together. Avis and Keon dated for somewhat a year before they decided to move to Ridgeland. Avis was excited. It was a little bit bigger than Vicksburg, a little more things to do, and it was also closer to her job. The home that Keon and Avis bought was a 3-bedroom, big enough for a family. By the time Keon spoke to my dad about marrying my sister, Avis was already pregnant. Avis called me at about 9, 10 o'clock one morning. "You need to sit down." And I was like, "What's wrong?" She said, "You're gonna be an aunt." And I was overly excited. It would have been my first time ever. And we sat on the phone and we talked about names and if he wanted a boy or a girl. And it just so happened to be around my 21st birthday. So we were just gonna have a really big celebration. I can remember I was giving my son his bath. We were getting ready to kind of settle down for the night. And the phone rang. I get on the phone and Keon is panicking and saying, "Can y'all come over really quick because something is wrong with Avis." And he's saying, "Y'all need to get over here quick, get over here quick. The ambulance is on the way." It's about a 30 to 45-minute drive from Vicksburg to Ridgeland. We finally make it to Avis's neighborhood, and you can barely get on the street. There's police everywhere, fire truck, ambulance. People pretty much saying, "Hey, you can't go down there." We're saying that's our family member's house. That's my sister's house. That's my daughter's house. We need to find out what's going on. Finally, a police officer walks up to us and asks, "Are y'all Avis's family?" And to look in that officer's eyes and to hear him say, "Avis is no longer here," is a feeling that I don't think I would ever get over. After the officer explained to us what was going on, I noticed Keon was at the neighbor's house. And he came out and he was kind of erratic. And I'm like, Keon, what's going on? Were you there? What happened? Did you see anything? And at this point, he's not saying anything. About 5 or 10 minutes later, they're putting him in the back of a police car. I'm thinking, is this somebody that I trust that's actually a suspect?
I'm Detective Frank Diddle III. I was the lead detective during the Avis Banks murder back in 2006. On November 29th, 2006, I was informed that a young lady had been murdered and that her fiance was the person that found her. When I go into a crime scene, I look for the straight facts. And if it doesn't add up, then I start breaking it down. In the garage was a car, and laying outside the car was a black female. And you can tell she still had papers and had clutching her purse. I also noticed that the door that led from the garage to the house was ajar. And it was apparent that she was shot. The bullet exit through the garage door. That pretty much told us that it was going to be a 38, maybe a 357. There was nothing else left behind. Typically, if there are no shell casing, that tells us that the weapon that was used was a revolver. Upon entering the house, I noticed that certain things were in disarray. Drawers were open, and the house had been ransacked. The back door had several shoe prints on it, all with the same pattern, and that door was kicked. The scene itself looked very staged. There were too many items that were left behind in order for it to be a robbery. The killer should have heard the garage door open, the garage door close, her open her car door. That tells me that this person was not trying to leave to avoid her. This tells me that this person was waiting for her. I did notice that there were some slash marks on Avis's body. That speaks volumes. Most people can shoot someone because it has a distance. They don't see the impact. But when you cut someone, that's very personal. I did go to the coroner's office to get results from the prelim autopsy. I was informed that she was at the time carrying what was a healthy baby boy. I also was informed that the gunshot to the head was possibly the fatal shot. She was also shot in the stomach, which means to me that someone was trying to not only end her life, but end the child's life. After hearing that, I was en route to the station where I could meet with the fiance, Keon. He seemed to be kind of jovial to a certain degree. Very laid back. He was texting, he was making phone calls. He was even kind of laughing a little bit. At one point, I had to remind him that, we're here because of an investigation of your dead fiance and your dead child. So we have to find out what happened. I asked him some of the things that kind of happened as he saw that night. He was more than happy to tell me what he saw, what he did. According to Keon, once he got off work, he had practice later on at 5:30. But he also had made groceries, and I believe he told me that he took the groceries to a friend's house, went back to practice, and after practice is when he went home to find Avis dead. Keon said that when he pulled up to his driveway, he hit the remote to open the door. Once the door opened, that's when he saw Avis laying out. He ran over to her, shaking her and calling her name to see if she was still alive. And at that point, He said he ran into the house to see if the assailant was still there. If a person has just killed someone, and you're gonna run into the house where that person is without a weapon, that doesn't make sense to me. Doing murders, most people who are killed by someone that they know. He's the one that found the body. He's the one that saw her last before she went to work. I had no reason to rule him out.
All this does is allow us to ask questions back and forth.
Thinking that, well, okay, I gained his trust, now I can read him his Miranda. At that point, that's when he wanted to call attorneys.
I'm sitting here trying to find out what happened just as well as y'all. Y'all trying to charge me with something. That's the way it's looking.
His demeanor changed. He gets on the phone, he's talking to people. He's lashing out about the police department.
These motherfuckers think I had something to do with this shit, I believe.
Before Keon left, we did contact the judge and get a search warrant so that we could do a GSR kit, gunshot residue. We really weren't sure what it would support. A gunshot residue just means that someone was in close proximity or had come into contact with someone who had been shot or that had shot a weapon. We extracted gunshot residue from both hands, just in case he come up to be our main suspect. You don't always get instant gratification being a detective. Some things are gonna come later. I spoke with the principal. Apparently, Miss Hughes was not there. She had called in. So the principal and I went to his office and was asking several different questions. Keon and Carla, were they dating? According to the principal, he had a no fraternizing type policy. During the middle of our conversation, Carla came into the office and she was already crying. And I said, why are you crying? What's the problem? She said she was crying because of what Keon had to go through, with his fiancée. I thought that the way she was crying and sobbing was very excessive. I mean, why cry for somebody that you really don't know, unless you know them?
My name is Gary Stewart, and I serve as the pastor, Greater Fairview Baptist Church in Pickens, Mississippi. I've been serving as Carla Hughes' consultant now since this incident happened. Carla and Keon, they had met in July of '06 at the Chastain Middle School. There was a group of teachers that would meet as friends hanging out after work. When Keon Pittman's fiance had been killed, the police began to question her because of the fact that students had made testimony that they were passing notes one to another, things of that nature. So there was evidence that a relationship was going on. Carla's very personable. Somebody you really just couldn't conceive of being in something of this magnitude.
I talked to him off and on during work.
Initially, the reason why Carla denied the fact that she and Keon were in an intimate relationship was because, first and foremost, they're teachers at the school. But now you have two innocent people that are killed. And so now truth has got to be dealt with. Were you two romantically involved?
Yes.
Do you own a gun?
No, I don't.
Do you have access to it?
No, I don't. I mean, my father has a lot of guns. He's a hunter. But I don't have any.
Mr. Pittman said he arrived home and opened up his garage, and he saw his pregnant fiancée lying in a pool of blood. He said that he immediately ran to a neighbor's home and asked the neighbor to call 911. Now, he has his cell phone, and he said the reason why he didn't use his cell phone was because he didn't want roaming charges. And I thought that was kind of suspect and suspicious, because who in the world thinks of roaming charges at a time of that magnitude? What he did was, instead of immediately calling 911, he reached out to Carla.
He was screaming. I couldn't understand the first few things he said. He was just saying, oh my God, oh my God. Carla, I need you to get over here. I need you to get over here. Something happened. Somebody hurt Avis.
Of course, we have to wonder, why is he not trying to reach out to her parents? Why is he not trying to reach out to her family members? What he says is that he frantically called Avis that evening, trying to reach her, trying to locate her, wondering where she is. But the truth of the issue is, Keon has never done that before, which goes to a pattern of, why on this day are you so frantic trying to reach out to your fiance? There's never been this type of concern. There's never been this type of urgency to speak to her before. So why today? Why now? Is it because you know that something has happened and you're trying to cover your tracks? One of the interesting things was, when he gets to their home, parks his car on the street. And I found that to be pretty odd, because if I'm coming home, I'm gonna park where I always park. If I park in my driveway, I'm gonna park in my driveway. If I park in the garage, I'm gonna park in my garage. But why would you park on the street unless you know that when you open up your garage, something is amiss? The detectives were really looking at Keon.
And then we talked right after work, after we dismissed the kids. And he told me he was gonna go to the grocery store, and he'd be at my house right after that. Around 4 or 5, he was at my house. He came to my house with the groceries. And he sat in my house for about an hour or so. He left at 5:10, said he was going to basketball practice.
After her meeting with Keon and him dropping off groceries to her home, she then proceeded to go see a friend of hers.
Well, he texted me from basketball practice. I'll say about 6:15, 6:20 maybe. And I told him I was just getting done working out. And he said, okay, well, I'll be back after practice to pick up the groceries.
Keon Pittman comes to Carla's home and stays maybe 30, 45 minutes. His time frame of him being gone and returning back to the gym is unaccounted for. Where did he go? How do we account for his whereabouts for the time that all this has taken place? He's the only one that could have gotten in and out of his neighborhood without the neighbors or anybody asking any questions. His history, his pattern produces nothing but suspicion.
I'm John Neal, current police chief of the Ridgeland Police Department. At the time of this case, I was the lead investigator and the commander of the Criminal Investigations Division. This case started on a Wednesday evening, and by the time that we got to the weekend, Keon was still #1 on our radar. Most humans, if this was your loved one and your unborn child, you're gonna move heaven and earth to offer as much information as you can versus invoke your Fifth Amendment right and ask to talk to an attorney when you haven't even been accused of anything. Keon was pretty much a player. He was a ladies' man, and when you couple that with the fact that he's fixing to get married and he's got a fiance at home who is pregnant, we kind of started wondering if maybe this is the motive that we need to be looking for. During that initial interview, he was able to give us a little bit of information so we could start backtracking his actions to find out where he was during the time of the crime. We were able to assume, based off the facts at the scene, that Avis was killed somewhere between 5:45 and maybe 6 o'clock. We were able to interview the assistant basketball coach, Antonio Caldwell. One of the questions that we wanted to make sure that Caldwell answered for us was whether or not Keon stayed at the gym the entire time. Keon was at Chastain Middle School and remained there until about 7:30 that night. So we knew he was not at the scene. That Tuesday afternoon, almost a week into the case, we got that break that we were really looking for. About halfway through the day, Detective Dillard comes to my office and said that he just received a phone call from one of our local attorneys. He thought he had a piece of evidence that might be valuable to us. This local attorney had a client, Patrick Nash, and indicated that they were in possession of a firearm that they think may have killed Avis Banks. You're always cautious about stuff like that because there's many guns as there are out there on the street. You know, maybe this is just something that's gonna be used to throw us off of our trail. What is it that they're gonna be looking for if they come forward with this information? What's the price that we're gonna have to pay? We've got an interview room at the investigations division. So whenever the attorney and his client get there, we walk them into that room. They've got a good relationship with Detective Dillard, so we just let him go in there and work his magic. You know, it's almost the longest hour of your life because you want to know what's going on in that room. You want to know what information is coming out of it. As we're watching from the monitor room, the excitement of this is that proverbial smoking gun piece of evidence that we've been looking for. This is pivotal. Mr. Nash was able to tell us through that initial interview that his father and Carla's father were actually brothers. So Carla is Patrick's cousin. Carla had come by Patrick's house, and during their conversations, she mentioned that she was having some trouble with some neighbors and she just didn't feel very safe at her house over there. Patrick questioned her as to why. And she just said, you know, there's just been some break-ins around. I'd just like to have something for my protection. Patrick had a .38 caliber Rossi 5-shot revolver that he wasn't using at the time. And he offered that to Carla just to take back with her for protection. And prior to Carla leaving the house, he also gave her a bladed hunting knife for just in case. But then he tells us that on the day that Avis was murdered, that he got a phone call from Carla that indicated that Keon's fiance had just been found dead in their house. Raised a little flag with him, but he didn't think much of it until a couple of days later, closer toward the weekend. Carla came back by his house and wanted to return the firearm that she had borrowed. Patrick, he looked at it and examined it and noticed that what was delivered to her as a fully loaded firearm was now empty. And Carla's statement to him was, you know, sometimes I just went out and did a little practice shooting. He thought that kind of odd. It just ate at him even more, and after a couple of days, he did the right thing and turned it right over to us. When we got that firearm, but we also needed to get that to the crime lab as quick as we could. Every day we're waiting on those results to come back in. And after about 7 days, they did. It was exactly what we were hoping it was going to show, that the firearm that Patrick Nash had turned into the Richmond Police Department was in fact the firearm that killed Avis Banks. You'd been waiting on these things, these pieces of the puzzle to fall in ever since this horrific crime happened, and bam. Just what we were waiting on.
My name is Michael Guest. I was district attorney for Madison and Rankin County. On that Tuesday, Carla Hughes' uncle and cousin came to the Richland Police Department, and they had with them a .38 caliber 5-shot revolver handgun. The expert from the Mississippi State Crime Laboratory stated that without a doubt that the weapon that Carla Hughes had borrowed from her cousin the Sunday before the murder and returned the Friday after the murder was in fact the gun that was used to shoot and kill Avis Banks. She actually returned the weapon to her cousin just hours after telling Detective Frank Diller that she did not have any firearms in her possession. And on Wednesday, a warrant is issued for the arrest of Carla Hughes. She was originally charged with the crime of accessory after the fact because law enforcement does not have enough evidence to link her to actually the death of Avis Banks at this point. But we do have enough evidence to link her to disposing of the murder weapon. We also were beginning to develop motive, and that motive was that Carla Hughes was romantically involved with Keon Pittman. We saw that Carla was very possessive of Keon, that she wanted Keon to leave Avis and to be with her. Carla Hughes had every motive in the world to kill Avis Banks, and even more of a motive than Keon. After she's arrested, there is an attempt by law enforcement to interview Carla. We attempted through her attorney to see if she had information that she could offer that would implicate Keon in the death of Avis Banks. After consulting with her attorney, she chooses not to speak with law enforcement.
I asked if you had any reason to want Avis out of the way.
I think, I don't know if I'm going to answer those questions. I just think it's safe enough to make just statements about that.
Okay, so you want to terminate the interview?
Yeah.
After Carla Hughes' arrest on Wednesday, a search warrant is issued for her home on Friday.
December the 8th, 2006. Search warrant at the home of Carla Hughes.
They're looking for the knife that was used to both stab and slash Avis Banks. They're looking for maybe items of clothing that would have blood on them. Looking for anything out of the ordinary that could tie Carla Hughes to the death of Avis Banks.
It's just the closet.
One of the things that they know from the shoe impressions left on the rear door of the home, they know that they are looking for a certain type of shoe that would have that same shoe pattern. As they begin searching through Carla's closet, one of the very first boxes of shoes that they find in the top of her closet is a size 10 tread-safe tennis shoe. It has an identical pattern on the bottom of the shoe that matches the rear door of Avis's home. They began to examine the shoe very closely visually, and they noticed what they believed to be very minute amounts of blood on the shoe. So we now believe that we have the shoes that the killer wore on the night in question. We now have two crucial pieces of evidence against Carla Hughes. First, she was in possession of the murder weapon, and now we have the shoes that were worn by the individual that gained access into the house. She would have been having to wear those shoes at the time the projectile would have struck Avis. blood would have spattered from that wound, and that's how that blood would have been deposited on the shoes that we found in Carla's residence. At that point, we believe that almost immediately after Keon left Carla's home, that she then drove to the home that Keon shared with Avis Banks. We believe that she kicked in the door, that she staged the crime scene there, and was laying in wait for Avis at the time Avis pulled in. When Avis exited the car, she was immediately confronted by Carla, who was waiting just inside the door. She was shot a total of 4 times, 2 of those wounds being fatal gunshot wounds to the chest and the head. As she was on the ground, we believe that she was stabbed and slashed. She immediately went home, cleaned up, and awaited for Keon to arrive. Based upon this new evidence that is recovered there at the home of Carla Hughes, the charges against Carla Hughes are now upgraded from accessory after the fact to murder to now 2 counts of capital murder. One being the death of Avis Banks and the second being the death of Avis's unborn child. Capital murder in Mississippi carries one of 2 options. It's life or death.
We got a phone call the morning of Avis's funeral, and it was Lieutenant Neal. And he said that, I know today is gonna be a hard one for you, but let me kinda ease your pain. And he said, we have a suspect.
We knew by the time this case was wrapped up and packaged for the district attorney's office, we were 100% confident that we had the right person.
On December the 8th, Carla was charged with 2 counts of murder. One because she killed Avis, and the other one because she killed Avis' baby.
Our strategy in this case as we're preparing for trial is we know we've got to do 2 things. One, we have to convince the jury through circumstantial evidence that Carla Hughes did in fact kill Avis Banks. Simultaneously, we also know that we have to defend Keon Pittman. The defense is going to try to give a theory of the case to the jury that Carla Hughes did not murder Avis Banks, but it was in fact Keon Pittman.
The prosecution laid out its case, and it just stuck to one thing. Carla Hughes met Keon Pittman, and she wanted the lifestyle. She wanted Keon Pittman. And she was willing to do anything to include murder to have Keon Pittman.
Keon was going to be the man that was going to rejuvenate life in her. But Avis was in the way.
The relationship, how did you view it? What did you think was going on?
A sexual adventure. It was pretty much whatever we chose to do sexually.
How did you view the long-term prospects for your relationship with Carla Hughes?
There was no long-term.
What we tried to show to the jury is the longer that Carla and Keon's relationship went on, the more possessive that she became.
When you were around friends and relatives during this period of time, how would she introduce you to those folks?
She would introduce me as her future husband.
Did there ever become a time when she began to talk to you about leaving Avis or getting married?
That would always come up.
On the day before Carla borrowed the firearm, Keon testified that Carla continually called him And he said that she became very angry, and she even uttered the phrase, "Something is about to change." And we know that that's when she determined that she was going to remove Avis Banks from the equation.
She knew that Avis was pregnant.
Yes.
Carla wanted what Avis had. Carla wanted the life, she wanted the child, she wanted the house.
In my getting to know Carla versus the picture that was painted of Carla, two total opposites. The prosecution, they wanted us to believe that Carla was able to separate the door frame from the house, causing the footprints of those shoes, those tread-safe shoes, to be on the door, stage the house as if though a burglar had come in, shoot and stab Avis Banks, and get out of there in 21 minutes. My suggestion would be Carla would have to be superhuman, or there'd have to be somebody else.
Carla's attorneys did try to make it seem as though Keon himself did it and blamed Carla for it.
They wore the same size shoes. He had a key to her place, sets it up all for him to be able to commit this crime, get the shoes, and get that weapon back to Carla's place, and her not know anything about it. It was the perfect frame-up.
The defense tried to paint a picture of Keon as someone who did not want to be tied down, as someone who was more of a playboy type of personality. But there was no way physically possible that Keon could have been in two places at one time. We had put forth eyewitnesses placing him at basketball practice during the time of Avis's death.
Mr. Pittman, did you kill Avis Banks?
No. No.
Do you feel any responsibility for her death?
Yes.
Tell me how.
If I would have stayed faithful to who I was with, or made a bad choice to sleep around and flirt with other women, this chain of events would have never taken place.
If the defendant would please rise.
On October 13, 2009, Carla was convicted and sentenced of incarceration without the possibility of being paroled.
When the words Carla Hughes is found guilty was read, it was like closure. It was relief. It was, now my sister can rest.
Carla seemed like she couldn't believe it. She really thought she was going to get off. She was sitting over, doodling on paper, and she was planning the waiting for her and Keon after the trial.
The gut feeling we have about Keon Pittman, that he's got some involvement in this, is still there, but we just couldn't back it up with any proof or evidence.
I believe Carla is the right person. Do I believe Keon is guilty? Yes. But the crime that he committed, he could not be charged for. Keon was a womanizer. And if it was a crime for being a cheater, yes, Keon is guilty for that.
In this particular situation, a dangerous game was played. And you have to be careful about playing with the feelings and the emotions of people, simply because you just don't know how it can turn out.